something is either criminal or or contract, basically. We're talking contract now. It seems like any party that comes up against you, first thing you got to do is demand to see the contract. And if they won't produce it, Karl mentioned that you don't have to bring. He had trouble getting his contract into court. And Karl, you've mentioned before about the other party doesn't have to bring the contract into to where the judge could rule on it, basically. Interpret his contract.
Exactly. Okay, so there's actually two questions here.
Uh-huh.
One is, what is the nature of the contract? Is it private or public?
Right.
Okay, and two is anybody an obligee or obliged to produce the copy of the contract? Well, if you're in the private, if you're a man or a small business or whatever, and you're suing on the basis of the contract, you are choosing to bring it into the public, okay?
Right.
Because what that is a confession to the court and to the public that I and this other party have been unable to settle our problems and differences man to man or man to corporations or whatever, and we desire the assistance of the community through the court system to help come to a conclusion. All right? It's basically saying, I have exhausted all of my possible private remedies. I've tried everything. I offered Greg my daughter, and he wouldn't even take her, and she's kids.
Greg, you're breaking up real bad. I can't even. Real bad.
Okay, is this any better?
Oh, yeah.
You wanted the water.
I apologize. I think it's just the weather. We got a lot of weather going through here right now. Anyway, but the point is that when one goes to court, whether it's your court, their court, anybody's court, any court at all, or if you go to your next door neighbor, if you go to your mom, Mommy, my sister stole my tennis shoes. And anytime you go to a court, you're saying that you and the other party were unable to achieve remedy man to man, and that you need a third party to intervene and provide an objective opinion as to how to settle the matter. Okay, it's saying that it's just not possible. And now number one, in order to do that, you have to in their legal system, in their own statutes, that anybody who's prosecuting a claim or a complaint in their system must be able to prove to the court that, in fact, all administrative possibilities have been exhausted. And most people don't challenge prosecutors on that. Okay? Most of the time, the first time you meet these people is on a lawsuit. Okay? And you're like, okay, can you show me where we actually exhausted the administrative remedy? And people are quick to sue. Instead of trying to settle man to man, it's kind of like if your neighbor's dog is peeing on your porch. Do you go talk to your neighbor and say, could you please keep your dog in your yard? No, I'm going to sue you because your dog's peeing on my porch. And that's the first thing people do instead of talking to their neighbor. All right? So this is why I'm trying to break this down into segments. And that's why, even though it sounded like a simple question, I saw it as a very complex question with 4 or 5 different elements to it. All right? So number one, the element is exhausting the man-to-man element or the man-to-company element or whatever to make sure that it's truly got an issue that nobody can resolve. All right? And unless somebody can prove that it truly has an issue that can't be resolved, it doesn't belong in a court. All right? Next, when it comes to a contract, if the terms of the contract include a privacy clause, for example, Karl had mentioned, I'll mention now, we have a colleague who had a contract with a co-colleague that specified that the thing would remain in private, and there was a part of the clause in the contract that said anybody who brought this into a court had to pay $1 million to the other party. Period. It's part of the contract. That all these things, that if there was any discrepancy, it had to be handled in the private, through a private education process. All right, not public. All right. So this guy goes and gets picked off, sends it to the Attorney General of Illinois, thinking that he was going to bust this guy up, and the Attorney General sends the other party of the contract a copy of the contract that was sent to her, as well as a letter that says, "Dear sir, this guy sent me this stuff and complained about this, this, and this. Would you like to prosecute?" In other words, the Attorney General of Illinois recognized that this guy had breached the terms of the contract, and as we've said many times in this call tonight, the contract is the law. So he broke the law. Okay, and the Attorney General was willing to basically be a star witness against the guy who sent it to the Attorney General. Pretty silly, isn't it? You know? So be very careful on your contracts. If they're not supposed to be brought into the public, don't do it. And if you do have a contract, or you want to make a contract with somebody, consider the aspect of adding that element to your contract to ensure that it stays in the private and it doesn't go into the administrative court system. Put a mutual, I've got to pay you $1 million if this goes to a public court. And you know what? Nobody's going to sue you in court. They'll work with you because nobody's going to pay $1 million just a line. Okay? That's just a little trick in contracts. Okay, and lastly, if someone brings a contract, if a guy brings a contract into court, again, as I said earlier, it is the contract which is the law of the contract.
Greg, there's another thing that I say to folks all the time. If anybody wants a contract written, pay Greg because he's good. He can write good contracts. But let me talk about the other. Me and Greg were talking about this the other day because let me see if he's paying attention when I talk to him, which I think he does. So just say that there's a contract and you can't force these other people to respond or react or whatever. What else can you do to a court, Greg, if the other side doesn't want to show up? What can you do?
If the other side doesn't want to show up?
Yep.
You can get a summary judgment.
What do you mean?
In other words, you still file your claim. You still file your claim, and you put in an order for a summary judgment. And if the other party defaults, it's the same thing as if the mortgage company wants you to go to court and you don't show up. They give a summary judgment, and the judge grants it because you didn't appear to dispute the charge or the claim.
What I'm saying is, when we were just explaining about if the second party, if you have a two-party contract, like say you have a private contract, a husband and wife, or a doctor-client, or a doctor-patient relationship, or an attorney-client relationship, or a priest and what do they call parishioners, private information.
I prefer a man and 300 cats.
Okay, and they don't want to disclose the private contract or the private agreement, or they want to air their dirty laundry out in public. Nobody in this planet can force somebody to disclose the information of a private contract into the public, regardless of what that contract is about. There's no power on this planet that can open up a trust and intervene into a contract if all parties don't want. If the two parties are a part of this, that's why, like a marriage license, you're allowing the state to be the third party intervener on day one. So if it was just a marriage license, it was just a marriage between you, or it was just, that's what I call it, say when you consent, a consensual, connubial relationship with a woman to procreate and produce offspring. There you go. The government can get involved. Whatever private contract you have written between her and him, the two people, she can run the court and do whatever she wants. Like Judge Greg just explained to you, the guy says, I don't think this disclosed.
I mean, and that's really important. And as an anecdotal little piece, my girlfriend in college and I had thought we would get married. We didn't because I wanted kids and she didn't. So we went our separate ways. Years later, she ended up becoming an attorney. And we connected again, through alumni stuff and everything. We started talking. And we actually before I got married, were talking about this stuff, and we actually wrote, a cohabitational kind of contract that would allow a man and a woman to live together under a private contract, so that they didn't have to become party to the state, or they didn't become party to the marriage, but at the same time, contractually, it gave the man and woman all the rights that would appear to a married couple under the state law. We actually wrote that, like back in 1992.
You're breaking up, Greg. You're underwater again.
So we wrote this agreement, back in 1990 or 1980 or something like that. I forget when it was, because we thought that was really interesting. Even though she and I never got married, we both agreed that we never wanted to get married. And she became a lawyer, and I became a goofball, right?
Wow.
And
I was saying, Greg, I was hoping that you were going to catch on to what I was saying. How do you kind of try to force the other person to realize that it would probably be beneficial for you to try to settle a matter on a private side before you have to drag it to court? Okay, Greg probably has the thinking cap on right now.
But the way I said that is, if you have the ability to be writing the contract at the beginning,
right,
you put severe penalties into the contract for disclosure.
Okay. Do you see, Greg, that's a lovely answer, but do you see the answer I wanted you to say was a DJ?
Oh, Bill.
Okay.
Okay, you didn't see how I was, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I was thinking one way. All right, go ahead.
What I was hoping Greg would stumble into eventually, I was hoping he was going to say that you wanted to go for a declaratory judgment. So under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 57, it's easy for me to remember because it's a 57 Chevy. It's Rule 57, and under Title 28, I think it's 2201. And all you're basically doing is saying, look, Judge, you like Greg said to me, he's like, hey, you know what would be fun? He said, why don't we just make controversies between you and me, Carl, and we go to court, and we try to get judges to make rulings and see how this stuff will play out, and nobody's really getting hurt. That's called barratry, and that's abusing the court system and the resources of the community. No, we can't do that, Greg. But there's something called a DJ, the declaratory judgment, that if you have a controversy that truly exists between you and somebody who really doesn't want to come forward and get involved, thinks they're going to sneak out of whatever they want to do, you're just going to propose this complaint. It's not a claim, it's a complaint, where you're just whining about something to a man in a black robe. And the man in the black robe is going to saying, well, if this controversy ever appears in this court, and if what you're saying is true and accurate, this is what this court would decide. This ruling is not binding on any party. It's just an opinion of what this court may do if these parties ever appear before us. So then you can hand it to the other side. Say, look, now I'm either going to sue you, and does this pretty well reflect what really happened between us? Did the complaint I put before this man in the black robe, it's like, well, yeah, it kind of sounds exactly what happened. Do you see what the man in the black robe ruled? That I would rule in my favor? Like, yeah, so now do you really want me to sue you in court? So you could just have the judge repeat what he just wrote here in this declaratory judgment? And do you want him just to actually put it down as the judgment of the court? Would you rather do it that way? How do you want to do this? So it's called a declaratory judgment. You're just trying to find an opinion of the court and how they may rule. That's a pretty good way of doing it.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's why I was going with summary judgment.
But that's what I'm saying. If you're just trying to test out theories, that's how you could basically do it without, because people got arrested, years ago for doing that silly stuff on me and Greg, like, oh, let's make $1 bet that the judge is going to recede my way, and then you just file a claim against each other. When you get caught doing that, you're going to get in big trouble. But this is another way to test it out and to show the other side that you mean business, and if you drag me to court, this is what's going to happen. And now when you talk about like a statutory grand jury, that's basically what they do. They have to see 23, usually it's 23, not 25. Usually, but because common law is supposed to be 25, but whatever. But what all grand jury comes down with an indictment says, basically telling the guy who did wrong, you got 23 people on a jury here that found you guilty or wrong of doing something. What do you think is going to happen when you get in front of 12? It's going to be a lot easier to convince 12 you did wrong. So, if the feds in the state of having a grand jury indictment against you, if I was you, I'd cut a deal with the feds. I'd cut a deal with the state. So anytime anybody gets arrested for a felony, the first thing you do is you demand to be indicted. So like I said, there's some man on the call, I know he wants to talk about drugs and felonies. The first thing you're going to want to do is you want to demand a indictment to come down from the grand jury. And you're going to want to present your case and your side to the grand jury. Now, a lot of people say, well, no, the county prosecutor, state prosecutor won't allow you to do that. Baloney. You could address the grand jury if you want to. And you say, I have the right to present the evidence, all the evidence, not just the prosecutor's evidence, my evidence as well. And if they won't allow you to do it, you could actually hand down an indictment. You could actually hand down a complaint or a claim to the grand jury. And if the feds are coming after you, you could go after the feds and tell the grand jury to investigate the feds and then accept all your evidence. And then they're going to investigate your claim against the feds. So it's interesting because the grand jury is an independent, like tribunals, an independent organization altogether. And they get to determine whether or not there's any merit to the claim. So when you get indicted by the grand jury, you're pretty well going to believe that you're going to lose when you get in front of a petite jury of only 12 people. If the grand jury found you guilty, well, the odds are you better make a settlement with somebody quick. Or you better figure out how to file a claim against the other party, because you're going down. But that's always a good test to put your feet in the water to see, well, what's going to happen when I go before a real jury? What's the odds of me getting out of this? Not just saying every time you get indicted by a grand jury, like O.J. Simpson did, not because you're not going to win in criminal court. You know, you might not get convicted in criminal court, but you're going to lose in civil court. It's pretty good that the majority of the population, if you get indicted by a grand jury, pretty well feels the same way the grand jury feels. So it's usually a pretty good indication that you better cut a deal. But most times, if it's chicken nonsense charges on a felony level, like this guy who released 12 balloons in Florida, and he got hit with 12 felony counts for discharging into the atmosphere helium. You know, he's got 12 felony counts against him. So if I was him, I'd say, you know what? Put this before the grand jury and let the grand jury indict me. And the grand jury probably laughs. It's just ridiculous. When it's chicken nonsense charges, then it's a felony. Even if it's misdemeanor, I want to be indicted. You tell them, put that in front of the grand jury. Because there's a ridiculous code of ridiculous carbon dioxide act of whatever, you know, Al Gore nonsense. I ain't putting up with this. I want them to be indicted. I'm not answering to any of these charges. These are ridiculous. So you can try to do it that way if you want to do it. I'm just giving you guys all kinds of different options how you can go with this.